At the end of the 1st century BC, the Roman Empire reached the Atlantic Finis Terrae, end of the earth, and they did so with the intention to stay. The Aster-Cantabrian Wars, which ended with the final conquest of the territories beyond the Cantabrian mountain range which belonged to the Asters, ended in the year 19 BC. It was then that Rome initiated the military settlement in that territory. First, they occupied the villages that belonged to the indigenous people whom they lived with peacefully in general. Then, they created new settlements that corresponded with their own way of organizing administration and making use of resources and territory. Their main goals were economic exploitation and trade. In order to achieve this, they built all the necessary infrastructure, new structures that changed the way of life of the ancient settlers and marked the new societies that would follow them till our time, leaving behind important archaeological remains that serve as proof of this. During the 80s, Manuel Fernandez Miranda instigated the project Gijón Archaeological Excavations. This project consisted of the intervention of 3 archaeological sites: the Campa Torres Hill Fort, Gijón's neighborhood of Sima Via, and the so-called Torrejón of Beranes. When the Roman army reached the Astur coast, they chose the Campa Torres Hill Fort as their place to settle. It was most probably chosen for its outstanding strategic position and its excellent anchorage, ideal for the provisioning of the troops. In this enclave, the oldest Astur-Roman archaeological remains in the whole of Gijón can be found. The commemorative plaque in honor of Augustus is the most unique piece to be found in the Campa. It has an inscription on marble dated between the years 9 and 10 AD, which is thought to have been part of an enormous lighthouse. Thanks to this piece, we know that at the beginning of the 1st century BC, this territory was already under the control of the Roman Empire and following their political system. The first settlement was gradually abandoned with the creation of a new administrative center, what we know today as Gijón's neighborhood of Sima Via. It's possible that Rome linked the existing community of Noega with the new center that was created ex novo. This could explain the apparent silence from Roman classical sources about the city of Gijón. Therefore, there would be an Astur Noega in the Campa Torres and a Roman Noega in Sima Via, according to Carmen Fernández Ochoa's theory. She was an important figure in the retrieval of the Roman archaeological heritage of Gijón. The Romans found the new settlement of Sima Via more attractive, since it also offered a strategic location and an excellent connection with the main communication routes. The civitas that arose between the middle and the end of the 1st century AD was most probably populated by peoples that came from nearby environments. Its greatest splendor took place in the 2nd century AD, that is, during the High Empire, although it continued to develop till the time of the Low Empire. This boom time was illustrated by the building of a strong wall and by keeping the terrestrial and maritime trade routes active. Gijón was a strategic location for the defense and the control of the Cantabrian Sea, and its port formed part of the regular trade route between the Mediterranean and the Atlantic. In addition, it was the most direct outlet to the sea from the provincial capital, which was Astorga, and from the military capital, that was León. Evidence of the importance of Gijón was the existence of its public Roman baths. In the Roman world, an urban settlement could not be conceived without the presence of Roman baths. The existence of these baths has been known since the year 1903, when some sanitation works uncovered the remains. The archaeological intervention was carried out by the engineer Calixto Alba González and the historian Julio Somoza. Its construction dates from the end of the 1st century and the start of the 2nd century AD. The main rooms were extended with the passage of time, something that informs us about the growth of the population. The Roman baths were more than just a space for hygiene. They were a meeting place for all the peoples from the civitas. In the baths, all the different social sectors could be found. There, people would bathe, have saunas and massages, and do physical exercise. The public baths were funded by the state, like any other service offered to the citizens, and rented for their exploitation. They opened at midday when all the rooms were already heated, and they closed at dusk. Gijón's Roman baths were opened as a museum at the end of the 20th century. Another important vestige of Roman Gijón is the curing factory, which was discovered in the Marqués Square in the year 1991. It was the first one to be excavated on the whole of the Cantabrian coast. It dates from the 3rd century AD, and the remains of this fishery were covered after its study and cataloguing. The powerful wall tracked in the different archaeological surveys carried out in Sima Via is the best testimony to the vitality of the city during the last centuries of the Roman Empire. In the Roman world, the wall was a privilege given by the Roman state to the city. Gijón's wall was built during the Low Empire period, end of the 3rd century AD and the first third of the 4th century AD. It is referred to in the medieval chronicles, and it protected Gijón till 1395, when the king Enrique III ordered the defences to be demolished and the city to be destroyed as a punishment for its rebellion in the battles of the Trastamara. The wall protected the peninsula of Sima Via. It had a perimeter of 850 meters and a height of at least 3 meters. The Mediguinus inscription, or the inscription of the Silonigus, was one of the most important discoveries in the excavations of Gijón's Roman wall. It is a funerary inscription that has the name of the Silonigus gens, which the father and his son, who died at the age of 15, belonged to, and whom the inscription in the plate commemorates. This inscription is an archaeological document of the first order that tells us about the adaptation of the primitive inhabitants of the Campa Torres to the Roman culture. Gijón was the capital during Roman times. It was a medium-sized administrative and political center, local capital of what is known in Latin as Caput Civitatis, that is, the head of a territory that also included the scattered population that inhabited the rural nucleus, the villae. A good example of this type of rural nucleus can be found in the archaeological site of the Roman villa of Varanes, located 8 kilometers from Gijón, in the parish of Cenero. It was on the border of the old route known today as Spain's Roman silver route, which connected Asturica Augusta with Gijón. The size and monumental character of the Roman villa of Varanes are typical of the Low Empire villae, although its foundation was established soon after the creation of the urban nucleus of Gijón, possibly at the end of the 1st century AD. It had 2 important moments of occupation. The first one corresponds to the High Empire settlement, from which ceramic materials and some architectonical structures, on top of which the foundations of further buildings were positioned, survive today. The second moment corresponds to the restructure and the extension of the constructions dated between the second half of the 4th century and the beginning of the 5th century AD. In the urban parts or residential area of the Roman villa, we can distinguish the service area with the aureum, granary, the kitchen and the oven, the rooms where the lord and his family stayed, which were the baths of the villa or balneum, the cubicula or bedrooms, the triclinum or dining hall, and of great importance was the oecus or reception area, where the lord of the villa received prestigious visitors. The villa of Varanus was active till the 6th century AD. Between the 6th and 8th centuries AD, an important section of the construction was turned into a place of worship. The rest of the Roman complex was reused and destroyed. But the remains are still here so that we can study them and turn them into a legacy for generations to come. When no actual written documents exist, the stones speak for themselves. In Gijón, thanks to the Gijón Archaeological Excavations project, stones were able to speak little by little. Nowadays, the city of Gijón and its rural environment are heirs to a rich archaeological Roman heritage, preserved and looked after, that belongs to the whole of humanity.